Well, good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us today for Where Does Growth Break? We are going to talk about the most common weak points. Like the old expression goes, a chain is only as strong as its weakest links. Well, that applies in marketing too. And so we're going to talk about what the common weak links are from looking at over a million. Yeah, over a million campaigns. It's hard to believe we've launched over a million campaigns and tens of thousands of those in 2026. So we'll be looking at recent data and talking about where growth breaks. It's interesting as I talk to advisors around the country, either our existing clients, sometimes prospects evaluating Snappy Kraken, or just advisors I talk to at conferences as I make the circuit. The common question I get asked is, what's working right now? What's really working for growth? And the more perspective that I've gained when you serve 4,000 firms and far more advisors than that, you get a perspective that doesn't always answer the question the way people want. And so when people ask me what's working, one of the most common things I end up saying is, well, actually, everything is working. And that throws people off, but it's true. Seminars work for some people in some markets. Social media works for some advisors with some personalities and persistency. Lead gen marketplaces work for firms that have a good conversion process. So everything can work, but it's all about execution. And that's why what I also tell people sometimes is that nothing works. Because it's true. Even the best strategies that work for one firm here or there oftentimes break for other firms. And so today, that's the crux of what we're going to talk about, is what are those break points? Because when you have strategies that work for driving opportunities, people are coming to your website. Absolutely, you're getting visitors. Go look at your data. You probably get thousands a month. When you've got prospects in your database, you probably do. You probably have at least 100 names, maybe more, just built up in a database. Sometimes advisors have thousands of names. Um, there's something to work with. Brand equity in your community. You have a lot to work with. Sometimes you underestimate it, but all of that has to be connected into a system that doesn't have breaks in it. So anyway, that's a little bit of an overview today. I see we're about 3 minutes after the hour. So just for housekeeping, my name is Robert Sofia. I'm the CEO of Snappy Kraken, one of the founders and a lifetime marketer. 2 decades in this industry doing nothing but marketing in financial services. And also, if you have questions for me today, this is live. So drop your questions in the Q&A and I will answer them if I can. And if you want to chat with our team, we've got our team as well monitoring the chat, and they're happy to respond to your questions as well. Yes, you can have a copy of the slides after the presentation. That's usually the number one question. So we'll just put that out there. All right. So where does growth break? Well, let's put this into a framework because every break point exists somewhere in this framework. So you can see here a broken pipeline. And these breaks happen in between the stages, in between. So you can attract a lot of leads, but if you don't activate them, if you don't get the right data on them and get them into a mode where they're now opening, clicking, and viewing your content, growth is breaking. So it's not just about volume, it's about volume and activation. And once you activate leads, then you have to nurture them because only about 15% will even do business with you in the first 90 days, generally. So the other 85% needs ongoing nurturing. And that's a place where it often breaks. Or sometimes firms are really good at nurturing, but they just nurture forever with a generic newsletter. But there's nothing that ever drives the conversion where they actually now come into the office, meet with you, become a real qualified lead. And sometimes it breaks there. And sometimes firms are really good at all these things up front, attracting leads, activating leads, nurturing leads, converting leads. But then once they become a client, it breaks because they're not doing the right things to drive retention and referrals. And so that referral pipeline, you can see the other break, right? Because everybody in the referral pipeline, they go through the same process. They go all the way back to the beginning of the attract phase. A referral is just somebody who a client helped to attract. And then it goes all the way through. So there can be a break there too. These are the breaks that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to specifically look at the data in between and what the actions are that cause these breaks. And so the first one you can see right here is between the attract phase and the activate phase, which is mishandling leads. Yes, every advisor gets leads, some volume. Now, lead volume can be all over the place. You may be getting thousands a year, you may be getting dozens a year, but you're getting leads. The first place where growth tends to break down is in the way those are handled, particularly where speed is concerned. So we're going to share data with you throughout this presentation. Here's our first data point. It's around conversion rate. So what you'll see is that leads that you get on your website or through your landing pages or on social media, really any lead source, if you get back to them in 1 minute or less, they are 391% more likely to convert. Now, that may seem impossible because you're in client meetings or you are out of the office or it's a weekend. So you need systems for this. Effective speed to lead systems. And even if you can't respond in under a minute, notice under 5 minutes, the leads are 21 times more likely to be qualified and move through that pipeline further than if you wait 30 minutes, just 30 minutes. Now, if you're like me, you think if I get a call back, if I get back to them in 24 hours, that's reasonable. Sometimes 48. I'm a busy CEO. Maybe you can relate to those feelings, but we're talking about lead performance, not our personal feelings. And so under 30 minutes may seem lightning fast, but they're 21 times more likely to convert if you get to them in under 5. So look at the conversion rate drop that happens over time. As you go out, you get past 24 hours and your conversion rate has dropped well below 10%. Now, this is something that multiplies over time, because if you look at this example, you'll see how one advisor who is running a system like this will respond in under 2 minutes, have something personalized out in under 5, educational content going out, nurturing that prospect in a tailored way, and then meeting opportunities, booking opportunities, all in just one window, all automated, versus the advisor who waits 24 hours. And what happens in this scenario, because you can see the data on the right, 68% of advisor leads that you get, like, they're being worked by another firm. 68%. Just assume 7 out of 10 leads, they're talking to somebody else. And 78% will choose the first advisor they talk to. So you just got to be first. You can't wait 24 hours. You can't wait 48 hours. Speed to lead. That's your first leak, mishandling those leads. We'll talk more about the strategy for what goes out to them in a little bit. But the second thing, firms are spending money on the wrong leads. So they are attracting leads, but those leads are not right for their firm. Now, this often happens because you'll sit on audience at a conference and somebody's on stage and they're talking about the lead gen program that they use or the platform that they use. But then you try it and it doesn't work for you. And we hear that all the time. I tried X or I tried Y, it doesn't work. But I have somebody else come in and say, well, yeah, I tried X and it's working great. Well, what's the difference? Well, oftentimes it's the culture of the practice, the infrastructure that you have, maybe your location. There can be a lot of factors. And the reality is you just have to know what leads are right for you. This is just an example of the 30 or so lead gen providers that are available in 2026. Now, this doesn't even go into events. We're not talking about running your own advertising. These are all lead gen providers. We've got leads piping into Snappy Kraken all the time. We can look at them. We can evaluate them. And oh, by the way, that doesn't take into account list providers that also can help you go find lists and do outreach. And you've got more sources. The reality is that all of these work. And they work for some advisors, and all of these fail. They fail for other advisors. That is why you need a system that tells you exactly how your leads are doing by source. You need to be able to track every lead across your entire business. Your event leads, your purchase leads, your advertising, your website, your social media. And for every single lead, you don't want to just have a, like a line item of what you spent. It needs to be more intelligent than that. You should be able to see how many new contacts did I get from this lead source? How much in new assets did we bring into the total pipeline from this lead source? On average, how much in assets do each contact or does each contact or lead have that comes from this lead source? What is their engagement score? So even if they have volume, assets, they're qualified, but what if they're not engaged? What if they're really low intent leads and they'll never respond? You should have an opportunity score, an engagement score, a lead score that tells you that. And then ultimately, how many of them actually convert to sales qualified and ultimately to clients? You should see a pipeline for all of this. Otherwise, how do you know where you should be spending? And as you're tracking your leads and they're coming in, you have to have, right, the wrong leads. I said they can be the wrong leads. That can be wrong because your system is wrong, or it can be wrong because the leads are wrong. And it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. Could be a combination. So one of the things that we've done a lot of time working with firms is analyzing different lead handling models. And so you can see some examples here. And by the way, if you want this playbook, you can scan the QR code right here while I'm talking through some of this, and you can access this playbook. And it's really about, when you have all these different lead sources, how do you handle them? And so we've got 4 different lead types, right? So marketplace leads, that's like Smart Asset, Wiser Advisor, Data Line. Market leads, they should go, they're lower intent, they don't have a relationship with the advisor, they should go to a business development or an SDR team. That's because those individuals will just pound the phones. Speed to lead is their whole job. They're not in another client meeting. They're not out networking. That's their whole job. So you centralize those leads, you work them until you get them to a point where they're ready to talk to an advisor. If they come from an event that an advisor holds and they've met an advisor or they know an advisor, well, it's possible there's still a lot of follow-up that needs to be done. Maybe they were there and there was a warm introduction, but it might have been passing. They might have just shaken the advisor's hand, said hello. Well, now you probably want to have an advisor involved with their own team of business development people, or at least a business development individual assigned to an advisor who helps them with the follow-up. That could be an assistant or somebody dedicated to this role. If you're using structured outbound, it's a different model. If you are getting referrals, they should always go directly to the advisor. The advisor should be the one to respond. And by the way, when I formatted my slides, I got the text cut off there a little bit, so apologies for that. But the point is, you have to have the right leads for the right lead handling model. So those are the first 2 places that growth breaks. Either the leads aren't handled with speed, or they aren't handled in the right model, or they're not the right leads for the firm structure. And I know that's not an easy button. People would love to hear me say, just use this lead provider with this model and your business will grow. But there's a lot of factors that go into it. And that's one of the things that you just have to consult with somebody on those things to figure out what's right for you. And you have to test and you have to collect data so you know what decisions to make. And the third area where this breaks down before people even get activated, this is a relatively new problem. We started seeing this in the second half of 2025, especially, is in the lack of organic traffic. So we talked about lead marketplaces and lead sources, but that traffic is usually paid. It's not earned like organic search traffic is. And when we look at what's happening with organic search today, 58% of all searches on Google are going directly to the AI summary, and they're ending without a click at all through to a website. Nobody's even clicking through. And when the AI mediated search is now giving them a response, they're getting their answer, and they don't have a reason to go to your website anymore. That means a huge drop in website traffic and a chance for your brand to be exposed to prospects that are searching for these types of answers. You see, if you think about fundamentally what it used to be like, advisor goes to Google, they search, they find a link. There's just the URL and the summary, and that's enough for a person to say, I think my answer might be here. And they go to your website. They land on your website. But that's not a starting point anymore. Now they're in ChatGPT or Claude or Google and still getting AI summaries. So your content, if you want growth and you don't want your growth to break in 2026, your content needs to take into account all three layers. All three layers have to be factored in when you create content. That means, yes, we still write for humans, right? At the bottom, at the foundation, the core of everything is for humans, building trust with individuals. SEO, you need the search engines to find you. But search engine optimization, the foundation for AI search is traditional search. The way that your metadata and your pages are built, and the way that you handle all of your hierarchies and your structure and your menus and your use of keywords and headlines and everything that you do for search engine optimization still helps AI search. So you have to have that in place. But now we have this whole other layer, and we don't want the tail to wag the dog, but if AI search is consuming 58% of Google searches now, you want to make sure that you are showing up there. So the search effort, the effort to be found, to be on the first page of search results, as people used to say, is bigger than that now. It's how do you show up in AI summaries? And by the way, if I'm not going deep enough on this topic for you, we have other webinars where we've gone deeper on this topic. Happy to do that with you or talk about how we help firms with this. But in principle, this is an area where you should be looking. Like if your growth is not where it needs to be, you should really be monitoring your organic search traffic from traditional search and AI. And you need to make sure your website and your content is structured for that. Now, assuming we already talked about 3 areas in the attract phase: your organic search, the correct leads, and your lead handling. But now, let's say you're getting the right leads, you're getting the search traffic, you're handling them right. That's great. That's a big part of the challenge right there. But now they're coming in and we're trying to get them to a point where they trust us enough that they want to meet with us. They want to have a conversation. They see value in that. We've brought enough value. And the way that you do that is by demonstrating competence for how to solve their unique challenge, competence for their situation, the reason why they found you and ended up as a lead in the first place. But most firms just follow up once or twice by phone, maybe shoot off an email. If the person doesn't get back to them, they might try once or twice. After that, it's like, move on. That's what most firms do. Now, firms that do it better, they have a drip sequence or something that they put people into. Sometimes it's their newsletter, and at least now they're staying in touch with them. But that is not the same as strategic follow-up. Strategic follow-up looks like this. It's built on relevance. So when prospects come in, the system should be intelligent enough to sort them, to segment them automatically, so that your clients by life stage, or in this case, your prospects by life stage, are getting content that is relevant for them, not irrelevant. Like me, when I was recently looking for an advisor and I started getting content about taking RMDs, but I'm only 45, and content about what to do financially during a divorce, but I'm not getting divorced. These are things that the firm just sent me because it was their generic messaging. And I suddenly recognized it was not relevant for me. So how do you make sure that your marketing doesn't just become noise, that it really connects? The answer is relevance. Now, in order to make sure that people are only getting content that is relevant, if they are in a certain life stage, they are getting content related to that life stage and that situation, you need to segment them based on more than just clients and prospects. So when you think about segmentation, if we don't want our growth to break, we're not putting everybody in the same bucket where they're just getting the same content. Clients get the same content as prospects, prospects that are in retirement get the same content as prospects who are in the accumulation phase. No, what you do is you can start at a foundational level with clients and prospects. It's better than nothing. But then you should have data on their open rate. What content are they opening and what are they not opening? What are they engaging with? So you can send more content like that. What lead source did they come from? Think about a person who comes to an event that you've held. They've seen you, they've shaken your hand, they met your team, versus somebody that just came from a NerdWallet website because they used a calculator and they don't have a clue who you are. Well, the approach needs to be completely different because they need brand exposure right away. So the lead source should determine the nurturing, and then demographic data, and then the lead score. So pulling in their assets, their income, their home value. And so when you have this data, the segmentation will determine the type of content they get. So in this case, lead comes in, they get your first introductory message, whatever we want that to be, based on the lead source that it came from. If they're coming from Smart Asset, they might get one. If they're coming from your website, they might get a completely different one. But those need to be set up. So the system will send the right intro. And then that becomes more relevant because they're like, oh, I see that you found us here. Here's some content that may be useful to you. And the person finds it immediately relevant because they were segmented to get content that would be tailored to their age and interest. And that doesn't stop. It continues week after week, building trust, building credibility until the system identifies that, in fact, it's time for them to talk to an advisor because their qualification criteria is there and their intent is high. And then a personal message gets teed up from the advisor. The system should do this automatically. What's next? So assuming that you have the right leads, you're handling them right, you're nurturing them properly, you're building trust. Now you got to get them in for a meeting, talking to an advisor. But that doesn't happen right away. In most cases, it doesn't happen right away. And so the next place where growth often breaks is a lack of long-term follow-up. 73% of leads are not ready to buy when they first come in. 80% will require at least 5 follow-ups. And that is why when firms do this, when they have a long-term follow-up, they see higher close rates and they generate more leads overall at a lower cost. This is the data. Everything I'm sharing with you is based on extensive performance data. So when you take this, you might be like, well, okay, I know those are true. Most leads need at least 5 follow-ups. Yeah, okay. Sure, our closing rate will go up 20 or 30%, but we already have a good closing rate. Or yeah, maybe we'll get more leads, but they're probably not the best leads anyway. We always get the good ones up front. Like we know we get the good ones. I hear this stuff. Sounds good. It's good positive self-talk. It's not always true. But these numbers, when they add up, make a huge impact on the firm. So what I've done here is just taken the exact same numbers that we just looked at, and I put them into a flow so you can see how it works out. So applying this data, when you have 100 leads total, let's just say for simple math, you have a short-term follow-up, maybe 2 or 3 times, a few emails, something like that. Based on the data, you will generate from 100 leads. Now, this includes all lead sources. So some lead sources convert at a higher rate, some at a lower rate. This includes all lead sources. Look at what happens in the outcome. When you get to the bottom, you end up with double the clients. That's the punchline. 100 leads, 5 of them become clients versus 10 of them. Because you're getting more, the close rate is higher, and the cost is lower. So these types of strategies implemented across the growth stack have a strong long tail implication for the growth rate of the firm. And if you're getting leads, you're buying leads and you're saying, hey, I'm only converting 2 or 3%, this could be one of the reasons why. And it doesn't have to be difficult. It can be fully automated. So we talked about some of the nurturing campaigns that would be created for different lead sources. You can see examples here of how you could build a campaign and the content could send out week by week automatically for every lead source. In this case, we're dealing with a pre-retiree. It could be a retiree. It could be a business owner. It could be a woman in tech. It could be any persona that you have a nurture campaign for that runs for 48 or 50 days automatically. So build that once for each persona of client, put it in your system, let it dynamically put people in and follow up so you can get the benefit of converting double the amount of leads. Now, when I talk about things like converting double the amount of leads, sometimes people just can't grasp how this is possible. But here are the benchmarks. So this is from over 60 million emails that we sent. Now, there's the average on the left, and there's the top 20% of our advisors on the right. Now, they do have bigger lists. So one takeaway from this is build an email list. Invest in building an email list. It's one of the best things you can possibly do for your business because it's owned real estate. Those people all gave you permission to contact them. It's a lead pool you can reach into and tap at any time. Now, with this in mind, though, it's not just about the volume. Look at the persistency. How many emails are being sent? How many campaigns are being launched? So if you're a Snappy Kraken client, you're only launching one campaign a month. Like, look what the top 20% are doing. They're launching 4. Now, what happens when the frequency goes up? When the frequency goes up, you'd think you'd get more unsubscribes, right? More bounces, less results, but no, the opposite happens. As the email volume goes up, as the campaigns launched go up, the click rates and the conversion rates also go up. Look at the click rate on emails from 25 or 26% to over 40. The conversion rate from 3.7 to 4.3. The overall outcome of this, as you can see in the bottom, is, well, a lot more leads. So what's the point here? That consistency over time yields significantly better results. And as you're doing this, as you're nurturing these leads, right, we're thinking about this lack of long-term follow-up that exists here between the nurturing and the conversion. Another big opportunity that's missed is using text messages. So if you send somebody 5 or 6 or 7 emails and they're not responding, the best practice is to send them a text message. Because text messages get 90% engagement, 95% get read and responded to in under 5 minutes. So that flow should include a text message, and it should be automated at the right time. Because this is another place where growth can be corrected. Because if you've got this pipeline of email and they're just not opening emails, but their phone is always in their pocket, just automate that outreach so that you can get that response and move that forward. All right, so this nurturing is happening, right? Let's go back through, right? You're attracting leads, organic leads. You're buying leads from the right source. You're measuring those. You're activating them with the right type of relevant content. That content is consistent over a long period of time. Now, finally, we want to convert them, right? So what turns them into a client? It's not just a bunch of emails. It's ultimately talking to an advisor. But what happens when firms just send all the leads directly to advisors is usually the advisor or advisors get frustrated because most advisors got in this business to serve clients and build financial plans and relationships, not to work cold leads or low intent leads. And they get frustrated, and lead gen programs fail all the time because firms buy leads and give them to their advisors. And the advisors are like multitasking, calling them on the way home on their cell phone. And they're like getting a bunch of voicemails. And then people who are like, oh no, I just used that calculator online. I'm not really interested right now. And the advisors are just like, done after a few months of this. So that's where we go back to the lead handling models, right? You got to have the right team in place for the right kind of leads. You want to give the advisors very high intent, high quality leads, and you need to know which ones are which. And that's where behavior-based automation comes in. As you have this big pool of leads, and they're all clicking and opening and viewing landing pages and consuming content, their engagement score should be moving up or down. If they're never opening anything, never clicking, never viewing, it basically means they're, not interested right now. So why are you going to give an advisor if somebody's already not answering phone calls, text messages, emails? Why are you going to give that lead to an advisor? What if they don't have any assets? God forbid, advisor works it for months. There's nothing they can do to even serve the client. So what you do instead is you have automation built out so that as the activity is happening, the intent or the score of the lead is increasing or decreasing. And you have qualification criteria, so you actually know what's their investable asset range. So when you give an advisor a lead to call, the advisor knows they're qualified, they're high intent. And this can apply to a business development team as well. You have different quality of leads and you work those leads differently. So this behavior-based automation or a lack thereof is where growth can break because you're just overwhelming the system with bad leads. So what does it look like in totality? This is the whole system. Lead comes in from any source, website, purchase lead, advertising, social. Lead gets enriched. We find out how much assets, how much home value, how old are they, etc. They get segmented automatically where they fit in your database. Then they go into an automated nurture that is relevant for them. This is a business that trades on trust. As you send them information that's automatically and evidently relevant for them, their trust goes up. Their engagement goes up. When their lead is scored at the right level, their engagement is high, only then are they connected with an advisor for the personal conversation. That's the whole system. So if you have that in place, you will be activating, nurturing, and converting leads into clients. But that's not the last place it breaks. Post-onboarding, after somebody becomes a client, it's very common for growth to break because they don't feel the same level of care and personal attention that they felt when they were a prospect, because now the advisor is working with the next prospect and maybe the team is now handling the account opening and they just might not feel as handheld. So content and automation can fix that. Or the firm might not be sending out the client net promoter score survey every year to collect testimonials and referral opportunities. But I'm not going to go into either of these things here today. And that's because I just covered it in our last workshop, retain and refer. So if you want to hear about that and go deeper into those things, please check that one out, because there's something else that at this particular moment is more critical regarding where growth breaks. Because even if you do all of these things, right, you have this entire system in place, but you have more than one advisor. So this is where, if you're part of a firm that has more than one advisor, this next piece becomes especially relevant for you. Because even if you have this entire system, growth can break because of the human component where the advisor and the client are concerned for implementing all of this correctly. See, when it comes to programs, technology, marketing, growth programs like Snappy Kraken or any other, you've always got the high adopters in a firm, the top 20%. You've got the non-adopters who just won't do anything. And you've got the movable middle. And the firms that are growing the fastest, they've figured out that growth comes from the movable middle. They get their high adopters on board, then they figure out how to turn their movable middle into high adopters of the best practices and strategies. So if you've got 10 different locations and you give them a tool to do all of this, but only one or two implement, then you're not getting the benefit of all the growth, because advisors face serious growth roadblocks. And whether you're a solo advisor or a part of a team, when it comes to doing everything we've just talked about, it may be that you don't have enough time, or it becomes inconsistent because you start with good intentions, but then life gets in the way. Maybe you have the blinking cursor syndrome. You don't know what to create, what content, or you don't have the time to create that content. Or you start doing these things, but you're not seeing ROI. You're not seeing a return. So you give up. All of these things, compliance hurdles can get in the way. Having to manage a bunch of different tools. You've got 10 different tools in your stack. You're trying to make them all work together, and it gets overwhelming. So all of these growth roadblocks have to be cleared. This is what firms that scale do. They clear these roadblocks for every single advisor in the firm, and they do that with a system. So every one of these roadblocks is addressed with a component of your growth stack. So if they don't have time, you're building automated campaigns and workflows, and you're making them available. If the advisors aren't executing consistently from a corporate level, you can auto launch that content and deploy those strategies for them. You're measuring the ROI so everybody can see what's coming back. What value are we getting out of this? What's working? What's not? Let's do more of what's working. Let's do less of what's not. You're making sure the leads are followed up on with scoring, with the handoffs at the right time. You're clearing the compliance hurdles. You're putting everything through compliance ahead of time. And you're making sure all the tools are connected and they talk to each other. They're really, truly integrated. And this is not the sexy part. Firms always want to see, like, what does the cool new tool do? But they forget often that adoption is the only thing that's going to make that tool actually work. I mean, I've got a really nice shed with some really nice tools, and some I have never used. And that's just the way it is with all tools. And it's no different with this type of marketing strategy. So if you want to unlock growth across your entire ecosystem with a multi-advisor structure, you need to remove these adoption barriers. Interestingly, according to Cerulli and Associates survey last year, 90% of advisors say the technology is effective. The technology, but 69% also cite integration issues, 68% lack of time, 70% lack, they struggle to implement the systems. So you have a 100% perfect system with 30% adoption because 70% can't adopt. It's not a perfect system. So you've got to make sure, this is where growth breaks, this is to the point, that you have a plan for adoption, for implementation. And firms that have this, that have a system, and they're addressing the adoption challenge, they are growing 2.6 times faster. Yes, they're growing more than twice as fast as average, simply for having a system. Now, in terms of where growth breaks, I will talk about 3 specific models for multi-advisor firms. So if you have multiple advisors, doesn't matter, 2 or more. These are systems that start to become relevant, and they're even more relevant when you have dozens or hundreds of advisors, like many of the firms that we serve. So there are 3 basic models. Model A, far left, centralized execution. That means one team does execution for the entire advisor network. Now that works great if the firm has capacity, but oftentimes the bottleneck becomes the constant requests that are hard to manage and the individual capacity of the team, where they only have so much space to work, so much time. And it just becomes, the bigger you get, the more of a problem it becomes. Now, on the far right, you have advisor-led growth. This assumes that all the advisors do their own thing. You just give them the tools. And that can work too, but the challenge becomes consistency. Some perform, others don't. And you don't have good visibility into what's working in the network versus what's not. So some firms do a hybrid. They offer some things, they let the advisors do some things, and activity happens across the network. And this is usually the better approach, especially if you have independent advisors. However, then it becomes really hard to see what's truly working because everything is happening, and it's like attribution becomes a real issue. So I'm here to tell you that there is a better model, and it's actually hybrid, but it has a specific structure. And we call this structure centralized strategy with localized execution. Now, this works for a lot of reasons. First of all, this is a people business. People choose their advisor usually because of who that person is. And if you take away that individuality, that personal touch, then you strip away a lot of what makes advisors successful. So you need that local flavor. But advisors lack the consistency, the time, sometimes the particular expertise for marketing. And so firms will have that in-house strategy. But with this model, you can still take all of that intelligence, all of that experience, centralize it, the strategy, but push that strategy down, publish it for all of your advisors so that every single location has a certain level of autonomy, a certain amount of reporting. Because all this activity, as for example, let's say real use case, you create a campaign that you want to go out this month. Maybe it deals with the recent IPOs or the impacts to the economy from the increases in inflation or whatever. It's really timely commentary. You want it to go out. Second quarter report. You build that once. You publish it. It goes to every location. Now, each location can decide whether to use it or not, or every advisor can decide whether to use it or not, or you can mandate it. You can send it out for them if you want to. So you can either give them the choice or you can handle it. And then when it gets down to the level, they can make their own personal edits. It'll automatically pull in if they have a different brand colors, different logo, different contact information, different disclosures. But you centralize the strategy, the key decision making, where that call to action needs to be and what it needs to say to drive clicks. But then the advisor has their little personal touch. And then maybe you allow them to do things like add a photo or use the drag and drop builders or pop in a video they recorded. And then that goes back through compliance. But all of this works together and the data flows back to you. So you have visibility on exactly what's working and what's not across the network. Centralize the strategy, localize the execution. And when you do this, then you can do things as a firm, like you can be like, hey, here's our marketing plan for the quarter. You give it to all the advisors, or here's our marketing plan for the month. Here are all the campaigns we're going to launch. Marketing created these for you. You can go in and opt into them to automatically be sent on your behalf, or you can go in and you can edit them, or you can just go and pick a la carte. So you can mandate the whole strategy, or you can just give them the tools. Like we see here in this case. So, by the way, we create this for our clients and then they can modify it and edit it and make it their own. So this is just an example of the type of thing you can empower your entire advisor network with to make sure growth isn't breaking because they have a plan month in and month out. And then as they're acting on this entire plan, you're getting back data on your total pipeline. You have an advisor leaderboard. You can see who's doing what and how much business they're getting and what content is performing across the network. You have a complete strategy for growth. See, so where growth breaks can be individual, tactical, or it can be network-wide, as in this case. But when you address every single place, this is the combined value of all the things we've talked about today. If you do all these things, your lead flow goes up by 11.6 times. Your clients from the same lead pool double, and your costs of acquiring clients, well, you get 3 times better efficiency out of your spend. All because you have a complete strategy. And with that in mind, I hope you've picked up at least one thing that you can implement today. Let's just recap. Mishandling leads, making sure that you respond quickly. Under a minute is best. Under 5 is minimum. The wrong leads. You need to know which leads are working for your firm. That means you need a dashboard, something that's monitoring every single lead source by AUM, by quality, by engagement, so you really know where your best leads are coming from. You need to make sure you're addressing the organic traffic challenge. Today with AI, there is a mass amount of search traffic that is getting deprecated to answer engines. And you need to make sure you're part of those answers when they come through. That's the first break. Then in the next stage, we've got the strategic follow-up, not generic follow-up, strategic, tailored to the individual, to their persona, to their age, to their investable assets, to their situation, because that's what builds trust. And as this is happening, it's not a one and done. It's not 1 or 2 communications. It's long-term, often taking months or years. And the follow-up needs to be tailored to the individual, using content that's relevant for their life stage and tools like text messaging if the emails aren't getting the job done. Then when the intent is high and they are qualified, you hand those leads off to advisors to be worked. All of this, of course, is before they become a client. But then after they become a client, you automate the onboarding process. You automate the referral generation process so that growth isn't breaking in your referral pipeline either. And last of all, if you've done all of these things, you also need a system as a firm that unlocks the total value of the power of your network. And that's what gets us to this combined performance gain. So it's not one thing. Sorry, there's no easy button. There's no silver bullet. But the combination of things results in cheaper leads, more leads, better quality leads, happier advisors, and more growth. And that's what Snappy Kraken is all about. So we've been around since 2016. We have 100 employees in the US and Canada. All we do is serve financial institutions. You can see some logos of firms that we serve down below. We have over 200 enterprise partners, 4,000 firms, and countless advisors that we serve. And on average, firms that work with Snappy Kraken grow 5 times faster than the rest of the industry. So if you'd love to have these kinds of results for yourself, well, please give us the chance to assess your business. We'll take a look at what you're doing today, and we'll recommend where you can patch the pipeline. Hope you've benefited from this today. I didn't get any questions in the Q&A, so we'll give you 15 minutes back. But thank you for joining us. And please, if you'd like to see this in action or see how it applies to you personally, please book a demo with my team. We'd love to speak with you. And if you want to talk to me personally as well as part of that, just let my team know. And I'll be glad to get in your calendar as well. We'll talk about how Snappy Kraken might be able to serve you. Thanks so much for joining us today. And until next time.